Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast. Alex Moss here, back as always with my co-host, darts statistician and the number one ranked American player in the Bang Average League, Burton DeWitt. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. In advance apologies, I'm having severe Wi-Fi problems today, so I have to go right next to the router. So if you hear any background noise, that's the dryer. I'm not in my normal recording situation. So advanced apologies for this, but I'm doing all right. How are you, Alex?
Yeah, I'm doing good too. Thank you very much. And we're back. We took last week off from our regular show, and we've had 6 consecutive nights of Premier League darts. We're talking just a few moments really after Glenn Durrant finished off the first week of Premier League matches during the restart. He's got a very big lead at the top of the Premier League, which we're going to come on to start off this show with. 4 points clear at the top with 4 games to go. Who do you see possibly stopping him becoming only the third player to finish top of the Premier League?
I think the obvious answer is Gary Anderson, because he's the one who's closest. Sure, Michael van Gerwen, the world number one, is the next one on the line, but he has 5 points to make up and only 4 matches to do it, and the goal differential is significant. So he would have to win out and hope. One of those, of course, would be against Durrant, but then hope that Durrant drops the other 3 most likely. Because if Durrant two of the other 3, because if Durrant gets a win and a draw, that's probably enough for him to hold off Van Gerwen. That's going to be difficult on the form that we've seen from Glenn Durrant so far, because he has been dominant in the Premier League. Even that draw the other night, last night when we were recording, a couple nights ago by the time you're listening, against Gary Anderson, if he took his chances early in that match, he would have won convincingly. Granted, Gary Anderson gave him a lot of chances to get back into it late, but Durrant was missing darts at double every other leg early on. He easily could have won that 8-3, 8-4, and not needed to rely on Gary Anderson falling apart at the end. That said, Gary Anderson is only 4 points behind. Yes, the goal differential is such that he's going to have to get that extra point, so it's as if it's 5, but that's a lot more doable than Michael van Gerwen's scenario, especially since Glenn Durrant could still slip up to Van Gerwen. If Gary Anderson wins out, there is every chance that he'll finish top, because he'll just need, Glenn Durrant to be held to 3 points, maybe even 4 if Gary Anderson has some convincing wins. But it's going to be very, very difficult to catch Glenn Durrant right now. He is in a commanding position because he has been by far the best player this past week and over the 12 nights.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And when we spoke on our last regular show a couple of weeks ago now, looking ahead to the restart of the Premier League, and I said, we said, would he be top at the end of this week? Well, he's done that with in very impressive fashion, hasn't he? He's got the 4 wins and 2 draws. He's the only player that's gone the whole week unbeaten. And yes, you can say he's rode his luck a little bit at times. You touched on that game with Gary Anderson. I think he had something like 7 match starts to beat Glenn Durrant. And if he gets over the line and wins that game, then we're not talking about a 4-point gap. We're talking about a 2-point gap. And then maybe things change a little bit. But 4 points with a 4-point gap with 4 games to go, it's looking very good for Glenn Durrant. And he said in his interviews that the aim to begin with is to get enough points to be guaranteed of that top 4. And right now, when we're looking at it with 4 games to go, 6 points clear of 5th. So he's very, very close to securing that spot in the top 4. And then he said once, if he gets to that point where he has qualified for the top 4, he's qualified for the playoffs, then it's going to be all eyes to get in that top spot. And I mean, what a remarkable achievement it would be for him, considering this is the 15th Premier League and there's only 2 players in history that have finished top of the Premier League, and general consensus, they are the 2 best players ever to throw a dart, Phil Taylor and Michael van Gerwen. So to add his name to that list would be an incredible achievement, and one right at the top of what he's been able to achieve in the game so far. And yeah, like you, I do think Gary Anderson is the one to watch out for, considering the form that he's turned up in this last week. Yes, he had that bad result against Gerwyn Price, but aside from that, he's picked up, I think, 9 points from his 6 games since we've got going again. So he's been in some very good form, and he's, again, aside from that draw against Glenn Durrant, he could well be in the race. But 4 points is going to be a tough ask. I think you're going to need to see Glenn do something that he's only done once so far in this Premier League, and that is lose games, and he's probably going to have to lose a couple at least to give Gary any chance. So for me, I've got to say, I think we're going to see Glenn Durrant become that third player to finish top.
Now, the other big story this past week is Michael Van Gerwen. Well, one of the other big stories, there was, a 9-darter as well. But one of the big stories and a lot of attention going to Michael Van Gerwen, losing half of his matches. And now his 100% record of finishing top all 7 years he's been in the Premier League is under a real threat as he sits third. What did you make of his week?
Yeah, it's been very interesting. And when we started this Premier League restart on Tuesday, he came in and we thought, wow, this is going to be normal service resumed, if you like. Glenn Durrant, we joked about it a little bit, but top of the Premier League, 173 days. And then the first day of the restart, Glenn draws with Peter Wright. Michael puts in a 100-plus average, beats Rodcross quite comfortably and regains that top spot. And we're all thinking, right, this is how it's going to play out for the rest of the week, the rest of the next couple of weeks. Michael's going to go on and finish top, but it's not worked out like that, has it? He's lost 3 of the next 5 games and he's put in some iffy performances. There's been a lot of talk about what's happened with Michael this past week. Various different theories going around, like he should be maybe using different darts. For me, I think the big thing is the lack of crowd, and there's another player in that list. He's in the top 4. These 2 players have got back in the top 4 tonight on this Sunday when we're recording it, Michael Van Gerwen and Gerwyn Price. But for large parts of this week, they have struggled without the crowd. And okay, we've seen Michael in between we've had that long break due to the pandemic, but we saw in the summer series he won a couple of events and done very well there. But when we're comparing them to the big events than we used to see in the big crowds like the Premier League with the thousands in attendance, he has struggled this week, and he struggled in the World Match Play, went out early. Go back to the UK Open a couple of years ago, that was virtually behind closed doors as well, and he went out early in that one. So for me, I do think he has struggled without having that live crowd there. So I think that's played a big part in it. You've also got to give credit to the players that are playing in this Premier League as well. We're going to come on to talk about it being the closest Premier League we've seen, and going into tonight's Sunday night's games, there was only 2 points between 2nd and 7th, and after 11 games in a Premier League season, that is the lowest gap there's ever been. So it's been one of the tightest Premier Leagues we can remember, and you've just got to look at the rolling averages of these players as well. You take out Daryl Gurney, he's in 8th spot at the moment, but those 7 players, 1st to 7th, rolling averages 96 to 99. There is not a lot in it over the course of these 12 games so far. So I think the players have stepped up. I think Michael's dropped off a little bit. For him to get top spot now is going to be a massive ask. It's just going to be a case of making sure that he's going to be in that top 4 at the end of the season, and he will have a shot at defending his title.
It's not just that his record of finishing number 1 is in jeopardy. It's that he's never even been threatened to make the playoffs. If you look, since he's joined the Premier League, he's never been outside the top 4 before this year after the 2nd week. He said outside the top 4 after night 11, after losing the other night. He's never been lower than 2nd in the 2nd phase after the first set of round-robin matches. He was down to 5th. He's still 3rd even after this week. Even 3rd is unprecedented for him at this stage of the competition. He's not been convincing. It was the exact opposite of everything I said last week. I mean, he could not have proven me more wrong this week compared to what I said last week. I said when you'd want to face him is early in the week. Well, he came out and played really well on that first night. And then he was just bad pretty much every match since then. Okay, he got the result today, but he didn't really even look that today as when we're recording, but he didn't even look that good against Michael Smith and getting over the line in that match. I don't know what to make of it. He really looked lost out on the hockey for the entire week, pretty much. And he has work to do just to make the playoffs. He is, from what we've seen, yes, you would bet on him because he still is the world number 1, but you wouldn't bet with any confidence. Every player around him has looked as convincing, if not more so, this week. It is just a position we've really not seen from him in the Premier League. Even when he's struggled, he's always gotten up and gotten it done in the Premier League. That's not been the case this year, and especially not this past week. I really just don't know beyond that what to make of it.
More Premier League chat coming up, but let's get to our first guest, and he's one of the players that's been involved in the Premier League, managed to survive Judgement Night last week, and he'll be involved in this 2nd phase of the restart this week. Here's our chat with the Handicappers Nightmare, Daryl Gurney. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the 2-time major champion, Daryl Gurney. Thanks very much for the time, Daryl. How are you doing?
Not so bad. Having another great day in Milton Keynes. I've been here now for just over a week, and I'm stuck in the hotel room today. As you know, there's no darts on today, but Yeah, no problem. Doing the interview, and I'm looking forward to actually doing something.
Good man. Well, last time we had you on was just before the start of the Premier League, way back in February now. I mean, when the season was cut short, you were winless, but all your games apart from one had gone to a final leg. So how did you reflect on that first round of games that you had?
Well, I kept on thinking that, I knew that I should have got something out of previous games, even the first week against Gary, and then I should have got something out of the game against Michael Smith. And then I was 3-0 up on Rob himself, but he came back. I think he came back with maybe 11 and 2 12 darters to get back into the game. So I possibly could have had another couple of points on the board from draws. Not saying necessarily I was going to win them games, but so it was my own fault, kind of getting to the latter stage of them games and getting the jitters and probably not throwing as well as I should have been. But the way it was going to where it is now, it wasn't so bad having the break.
No, definitely not. And just before the break, we did have the UK Open, and you had a deep run there, getting to the semi-finals. Lost out to Michael van Gerwen, who hit a 9-darter in that game in the semi-finals. Were you happy with how it went for you in Minehead?
Bar probably losing that game to Michael. To be honest, it was a long weekend for me because I won 3 games. I went to the final legs, so I just sneaked them 10-9. But I think the time Michael came around, I was certainly get it tight because obviously the game that came before that too against Classen, I won the same scoreline. But no, I was all right. I was there and thereabouts. There was a couple of games I was behind, especially against Keegan Brown. I think he was 9-7 up for me, and I think I done well to break him and then maybe hold and maybe full for the match. So no, I was doing the right things at the right times at the latter part of the game, especially whenever it was miss a double now and you go to the tournament. So no, I was happy enough that way. But as I say, the only thing I was really disappointed on was probably the performance against Michael.
And not long after the UK Open, there was that long break, 4 months for you guys without playing, and for you it was 4 months because we didn't see you involved in the home tour at all. I mean, how did you spend that break with no darts?
Well, I'm playing 22 years now, and I've never really hardly taken a week off darts, never mind 3 or 4 months. So for me, I just spend it with my son, obviously, since he's been born. I've been, I'd say, probably 99% of the weekends and gone through half of the weeks. So I was only seeing him 2 and 3 days a week. And whenever I was home then, I was just with him every day and, to be honest, enjoying life.
Yeah, as you say, I mean, for one of the players like yourself, you've played the Premier League for the last few years, World Series, and we see you in pretty much everything there is. I mean, did it take a little bit of getting used to being back at home for such a long period of time?
No, not really, to be honest. I mean, my day was just full of excitement because my wee boy's up running about, he's on his feet. So I was just playing with him out in the street, and he was going about on his scooter, and I was making him up, getting swimming pools and stuff like that. So the days were just full up with him, just running after him, but that was great. But to be honest, I think then, just after I got back into the summer series, and then we had another week or so off then, couldn't wait to get back at it then because I got a taste for it again. But no, it was great spending time with my son, and it was just the best days ever, just learning his wee personality and everything he likes, and I was just he was my best friend.
It's nice to hear it. I mean, you touched on the summer series there. That was when the Pro Tour resumed back in July, and you had a couple of good runs there, a quarter-final and a semi-final going into the World Match Play a week or so later. Did you feel like that week had set you up well for it?
To be honest, I felt like that was going to be the week I needed to practice for the match play, but I think the way it turned up, I played better in the summer series than I did in the match play. But no, I was glad. I mean, I was in 50-50 where I was going to do the summer series, and I thought then that I needed to go and get match practice. I'd only turn up to the match play and not having to play a match in 4 months, and then seeing if it goes bad or good or whatever. So I thought, no, I'll be just good there to go and get match practice, and turned up and bar the first day I wasn't that great, but it was just circumstances as I was supposed to play in the live stream, and then they moved us back to an hour board, and then I kind of was doing there, and I was everywhere, and I didn't really play well the first day, but after that I kind of picked up my form, and showed the way I was practicing really, and got a couple of good results. Wouldn't have minded making a final or winning one, but the standard was really good. Whoever beat me.
Just on the World Match Play as well, that followed the week after, and it was very different surroundings really for a TV major, especially the World Match Play. We're so used to it being in Blackpool. How did you find the whole experience of first playing on that stage and with no crowd behind you either?
Oh, it was very strange to start off with. Obviously, you go up there and there's no real great walk on, and everybody's in full voice, because obviously I have a nice walk on, and my first game was against Ricky Evans, and he's got a good walk on. So the whole crowd, the vibe of the whole building would have been buzzing. And how Blackpool is, it's always very warm, so you usually walk out of the practice room and just on a sunbed really to play darts. But no, it was just a bit strange. It took a few days to get used to it. And then after you get over that, then you just actually concentrate on the match and just leg on leg, trying to win as many as you can, and hopefully you get to the finish line before your opponent does.
And then the Premier League restarted last weekend. You had a bit of work to do to avoid the elimination. 3 points from safety going into the week, but you pulled it off. 2 wins from your first 3 games. What was the feeling like when you knew that you'd done enough to stay in?
Well, I wasn't great to start off with, because I just played Peter and got beat, and Rob was on after me. But I didn't want no favours from Rob was playing Glenn. I was thinking whatever happens, Rob Cross is one of the best players we've had in the last couple of years, and everything he's won, I thought he could beat Glenn easily. So I wanted to do it myself. I wanted to go up there and get a point, to put the pressure more on Rob. But I didn't do that, and he kind of went up there, and if he got the 2 points and got the 1, I was out. So I was happy after it was said and done, but I was more looking forward to me trying to get 6 points from 6 and trying to keep myself instead of going down to the last game and hoping that I needed Glenn to beat Rob.
But you did stay in, and then one of the games of the week really was your second game with Peter Wright, 8-6 win in a game which he hit a 9-dart leg in. I mean, to come off stage and win a game like that, you must have took a lot of confidence from that win.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I knew I had to play well. I usually always play well against Peter, bar the first time we played earlier in the week. But he missed a 9-darter then too, and whenever I shook his hand after he done the 9-darter, I said to him, no, I knew he wasn't going to miss it this time, because obviously whenever we're standing behind a player and they're on for a 9-darter and he's hit the first 2 trebles, whenever I looked up, you kind of look at his throw to see if he's followed through and got through it right, and obviously with his reaction the first time he played, he pulled it, but this time I knew that I just watched his arm and listened for the game shot, and came and fair play to him for whatever Peter's done, world champion now in a 9-darter. He's still only getting better, Peter, right? And that's a scary thought.
And it's very rare really that we see the same players playing on stage on TV 6 nights on the spin, but that's what you guys have just done in the Premier League. I mean, how did the players cope with that new experience of playing so many games?
Well, for me, it's just nice actually to just play one game, where you're wearing your own, just the preparation right, and then see how you're going. It's one of them ones that's hard to play in, but it's also easy, as in you're playing against the best players in the world. If you're not on your A game, you're going to get beat, and if you're anything short of your A game, you're going to get a sore lesson. So it's easy in that sense, but no, I'm still really enjoying it. Lucky to be here. As I said, I didn't think coming into this last week that Rob Cross was going to lose all 3 games and I was going to get 3. I thought I'll just come here now, try and win many points as I possibly could, and Rob will win 2 games or whatever, and then that's not enough points for me to catch him, but I wasn't at it, and thankfully I'm here for another week, so I'll put in another good week's practice.
And you touched on it at the start as well, that you're still based in Milton Keynes during these couple of days that we've had without the Premier League before it gets going again tomorrow. I mean, did you want to go anywhere else? I know it'd probably be difficult to head home between that break, but did you think about maybe going somewhere else just to get a new surroundings for a couple of days?
Well, my manager asked to see if I wanted to go to his house, but he was getting his son Jack to stay over, and he says he gets kind of maybe noisy and cries through the night. So I said, I think I'll stay here in the hotel with a bit of peace and quiet. So yeah, that was just the decision made. But no, I mean, it wasn't so bad. I mean, we played on Sunday. Yesterday, I went out and done a bit of shopping. This phase, I went out and bought myself a couple of new things, t-shirts and stuff, because I only packed for probably the first week. But no, I was alright doing a few bits of shopping. And today, done the same thing. Went and just got bits and pieces for the room. And listening and doing this interview now, and after this is probably back to sitting on the bed and watching a bit of TV, but later on go for a bit of practice.
You're back underway on the Premier League tomorrow night, Wednesday through to Saturday, 4 more league games. I mean, you're 5 points off the top four, going to probably need to rely on other results, and you'll also need to go perfect and win all 4 games to stand a chance. So how do you approach this week now?
I think the way I look at it is just go up there and try and win as many games, try and get as many points as possible, and probably upset, do a couple of upsets and the people that's in the top 5 or top 4, whatever the point difference is up there. But no, I mean, I'm hoping still they go up there, and as I say now, if I could take away there, if I had a loss, a draw, and 2 wins, I'd be more than happy. But the standard of people that's left to play is still very difficult. But I'm up for the challenge and up for the fight. And as I say, well, first things first, I'd love to make it in the double digits and 12 points or something like that. If I can get around that, I'll be happy enough. And if I'm still in the same position, I'll be okay, just as long as I get some more points.
Daryl, it's always a pleasure to get you on. Appreciate your time and wish you all the best with this week and the rest of the year as well.
Not a problem. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Let's move on to our question of the week then, and it is: which behind closed doors tournament have you enjoyed the most, the World Match Play or the Premier League?
Can I go off script and go with the 2018 UK Open? Just because it was such a bizarre event, and when we saw 2 semifinalists that we would have never projected, plus John Part, rolling back the years in terms of results, maybe not in performances, just getting over the line without ever hitting his top stride to make one final hurrah in the PDC. But of the two you mentioned, I'm going to go with the World Match Play. It's a ranking event. It's the second most prestigious event on the calendar, and it was just a brilliant week, 9 days of darts, which culminated in a breakout performance for one of the young stars of the game. And we have the added factor that it was the return of televised darts after 4 or 5 months of, nothing. Really satiated our need to see the best players playing again, and it was just a fantastic event. The Premier League reserved for the top 9. Okay, the first 2 nights there were those few remaining challengers, but they didn't perform well. So you really just had the 9 Premier League players, and it's the same as it is every week, just instead of it being week after week, it was day after day for nearly a full week. It was good, and obviously seeing Peter Wright finally hit his first televised 9-darter and come close 2 other times to having a 9-darter, missing the double 12 each time by about a mile, definitely helped, but it doesn't compare, at least to me, to the World Match Play.
Yeah, like you, I was going to go off grid, and I joked with you before we started recording. I was going to go with the World Masters last year because they were effectively doing the social distancing, and there was a very limited crowd there at the Circus Tavern. But yeah, I mean, if I had to choose between the two, and these are the 2 big major events that we've seen take place since this pandemic broke out months ago now. But kudos to the PDC for putting both of these events on. But start of this week, I didn't get to watch any of Tuesday's games and caught up with the results and managed to watch most of it for the rest of this week. But Wednesday and Thursday I thought were, I was thinking, yeah, definitely going to be the World Match Play for me because like you said, and like we said on our review show, it was a brilliant tournament. But I think those couple of days and the Tuesday as well, there were some quality darts on show, but there was the games with the challengers, and it was a hard watch to watch those games because you felt a little bit for those challengers, Chris Dobie, Jermaine Wattermina and Jeffrey Desvan turning up to Milton Keynes to play behind closed doors, and it did take from the spectacle a little bit to see those one-sided games because you could you could tell, yes, okay, the players, they wanted to do their best, but just inside, really, there was nothing really there for them to get themselves going. There wasn't that big crowd. And I go back to a comment that Matt Porter, the PDC chief executive, made right back at the start of this pandemic, around about March, April time, and people were asking him, could we see the Premier League played behind closed doors? And back then, okay, there's been a lot of time that's passed since then, but back then he was saying that he didn't feel that the Premier League would work behind closed doors, and I think a lot of people agreed with that. And when I was watching those Challengers games, I was thinking back to those comments. I was thinking, yeah, I can see what he meant by that. But then we got past Judgement Night, and we've seen over these last few nights some real quality, and we've seen the race to the top four as well. And I think that's helped with making this a great week of darts and making it something that you want to tune into every night, because the race to get in that top four has been so exciting. And even that top spot, Glenn Durrant seeing if he can keep it going night after night and keep that lead at the top. And what Michael Van Gerwen's gone through this week as well, losing the games and having to fight back just to get in the top four, let alone get that top spot that he's held on to for such a long time. So I think at the moment I'm going to give the edge to the World Match Play, because it was a really good week, and we saw the first time major winner, which was nice to see. But the Premier League, given its iffy start, I felt this week, it's really picked up the last few nights, so it's not too far behind for me.
Now, other news outside of the Premier League, the World Grand Prix will also be behind closed doors, and it will not be in Dublin. It'll be in England, in Coventry. What did you make of the move?
Yeah, I think this is probably the biggest news that we've had since we last recorded the show. And my first initial reaction was, before really delving into it a little bit, felt a little bit weird, because touch wood, we're going to see the World Series finals go ahead in a few weeks' time, the 18th to the 20th of September, with a crowd in Austria. The following weekend, we've got the European Tour coming back in Germany over that weekend of the 25th to the 27th. And then less than 2 weeks later, we're going to see the World Grand Prix behind closed doors. And maybe when you see big events with a crowd on TV and on the stream with the European Tour, and then you go back to events behind closed doors, maybe it is going to feel a little bit weird. I don't know. We haven't got to that point just yet when we're going to watch these events. But then you think about it a little bit, and this is after the Premier League, this is the next big event in terms of the Sky Majors and the major events that we have in the PDC calendar. And like with the Premier League, we've seen this stretch of nights behind closed doors, and we're going to get it this week coming up when you're listening to this. It is a case now, I think, of the PDC fulfilling their engagements with the broadcasters that they've got and getting these events on. And I suppose not just the broadcasters, but also the players as well, because these are the events which carry the biggest prize money and the ranking money, I suppose, on the rankings as well. And yeah, I think it was a case of getting this event on. I believe that the dates that they've switched to, I think they've pushed it a little bit further back. It's usually on a Sunday to a Saturday. It's now going to be a Tuesday to a Monday. So we're going to get the rare occasion of a major final taking place on a Monday night. But yeah, I think it was a case of just getting it on, and I think the PDC left it probably as far as they could in terms of getting it on in Ireland. I believe the City West has been used for COVID measures, and that's still the case right up until the start of this event, I believe, or maybe going into the first couple of days. So it just wasn't going to happen. And the City West has held the event since 2001, 19 years. It's been in Ireland for 20 years, and yeah, coming over to England, don't think you can read too much into that, because we're not going to see the crowd. So I'm assuming we're going to get back to the City West in 2021. But like I said at the beginning, I think it was just a case of needs must and making sure that this big event does still go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And as with every decision, they had to do something that made the most sense. And this, in the end, made the most sense. If you can't have a crowd and the venue's not going to be available anyway, then yeah, you're going to have to move it to a place that is most accessible and that you can stage it behind closed doors the easiest. I don't really know what else to say. Once it becomes safe to have darts again in front of a crowd, it will happen. But that's obviously not yet the case in the UK or Ireland, and therefore putting it behind closed doors in Coventry was the only decision. And it's still questionable whether we'll be able to have crowds at some of the events on the continent. So there was always that possibility, but we just don't know. I don't have a problem with it. I think hopefully next year it'll be back in Dublin. Hopefully next year all the events will be back in front of a full or near full crowd. But it had to be what it had to be, and this is what it had to be.
Now we'll move on to our next guest, and it is the Sky Sports commentator, Stuart Pyke. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the Sky Sports commentator, Stuart Pyke. Thanks again for joining us, Stuart. How are you doing?
Yes, no problem. Good to be with you.
Now, it's almost a year to the day since we last had you on the show, end of August 2019, recapping the World Series in Australasia last summer. We're still hearing you in the commentary box this summer, but on the Premier League games. Can you quite believe it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really strange. To be honest with you, as we talk here on Bank Holiday Monday, I would nearly be home from Australia and New Zealand. This was the weekend that we were due to fly home after having 3 weeks on the World Series in Sydney, Wollongong, and then up in Townsville in Queensland, and then across over to Hamilton in New Zealand. So all we can hope is that we're back there doing it all again in August 2021. It's all very strange, isn't it? But I think the way that darts has adapted, the way that Matchroom and Sky Sports have managed to put the show on at the match play and then the Premier League, has been outstanding. And it's worked. It really has worked. The feedback has been, I would say, 99.9% very, very positive. The players love it. The punters watching on TV seem to love it as well. And we're just counting down now and hoping that, come October, we will be able to, in some way, shape or form, have darts fans back in watching the Arrows.
Fingers crossed. And just touching on the World Series there, you've been a big part of it for, ever since its inception, really, 7 or 8 years ago now. And I know they're not the biggest events on the darts calendar when we think of all the tournaments, but for you, I mean, how special are those trips to Australia and New Zealand that you get to go on?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky. I've been broadcasting for 40 years now, which gives away my age, and I've been lucky in my job to travel around the world a few times doing all sorts of sports. But yeah, I mean, it's still a real privilege. I have to say, Mrs. Pyke was not too happy that I wasn't away for 3 weeks. I think she enjoyed the break. Seriously, it's been a phenomenal success. And a lot of money has been and time has been invested in it. We're supposed to be back in New York, of course, in June, but it will all happen again next year. We've just got to hope that this dreadful situation, dreadful virus through the world, will disappear, or that we can get a vaccine and everybody can stay safe and then move on. But there's no doubt the World Series has been a huge hit. And I know for a fact that they are still looking in the future at new areas, new continents, and new countries to expand this even more.
Definitely, yeah. And if we rewind back to March of this year, we had the UK Open, then we had that Premier League night in Liverpool, and then we had that long break due to the pandemic. How was the lockdown for you?
Well, it was very odd. 4 months doing absolutely nothing. I did the Premier League in Liverpool that last Thursday night. On the Friday and the Sunday, I was commentating on Super League for the BBC Radio 5 Live, and then that was it. Lockdown, shutdown, and I don't think it's really, really odd. It's surreal thinking back to that night at the Echo Arena in Liverpool, and I know that there were a few hundred no-shows. They were worried about what was happening and what was to come, but it was still a huge crowd, thousands turning up to enjoy the Premier League. I don't think anybody really quite understood the seriousness of the situation and what was about to come. Then everybody's sort of in lockdown, and then everybody's life changes, and my heart goes out to all the people and the families of the people who lost their lives, and the situation, I think, has changed everybody forever. Everyone talks about the new normal, but this is the normal. And for how many years, we'll have to wait and see. But I think sport plays a huge part in everybody's lives, and the fact that we have had to have live sport back across all, sports, football and rugby and darts, of course, and snooker, cricket, Formula One. The fact that it's now happening again, I think has been a big boost for everybody, certainly for me.
Yeah, it definitely has. And last month we saw darts make its return on TV with the World Match Play. You were, of course, part of the Sky Sports team that week in Milton Keynes. How did you find the whole experience to begin with, working on the event with no crowd and away from Blackpool as well for that one?
Yeah, I mean, it was, of course, it was really strange. And no Dave Clark and no Rod Studd either. Dave Clark decided to retire. One of the very, very best in the business, and a very good friend. And we wish him well. What he managed to achieve after his diagnosis for Parkinson's is no more. Well, it's nothing short of remarkable. I think he was given 2 years as a presenter, and 10 years later, he decided to retire on his own terms. So that's good. And of course, Rod, we know, has had the stroke, but I'm pleased to report I'm in touch with him, on a daily basis, and things are improving, and it's a slow process for him. Lots of physio and occupational therapy, and lots of hard work ahead for him. But hopefully it won't be too long before we see him back in the Coventry box. But as for the event, it just worked. I mean, the crowd noise worked, and of course everybody is separate. Separate groups from each other, green zones, amber zones, red zones, and it's the way it has to be. The players were all tested. We have daily temperature checks. There are only certain areas that we can go in. For those of you who know the arena at MK Dons, the arena, and then there's 2 balconies. Sky is on the first balcony. That's where the commentary boxes are. There's a presentation area. Everybody has their own table. But there are 2 commentary boxes now with perspex glass in between, so you can see, and you can use a talkback button to talk to your co-commentator. One person in the box at a time. Everyone has to wear masks, of course. There's lots of gel, lots of gloves, lots of masks, lots of wipes, and it is the way that it is at the moment, and it's just getting used to what's happening. But full credit to the players, because I think, I know for a fact the stats say it, that this year's match play, in terms of the standard of the darts, was actually better than last year's at Blackpool.
The match play was a really good watch, and this past week we've seen the Premier League restart, and you combined working on that with a little bit of Super League as well this past week. I mean, what have you made of the 6 consecutive nights that we've seen of Premier League action played out?
The players have really stepped up, haven't they, and delivered. They did it the match play with the standard they had at the Premier League, and all those doubters who wrote off Glenn Durrant as being too old and he'd never make it in the PDC. In the last 2 years, have been nothing short of outstanding. And one of the questions I get asked quite a lot, more than most actually, is why on earth didn't Glenn Durrant come over to the PDC earlier? Well, the simple answer is it didn't suit him, and he didn't want to. And he achieved all he had to do at the BDO, winning those 3 Lakeside Championships, and he really is proving his pedigree. We know beyond a shadow of a doubt, he is going to be in the playoffs, and we all look forward to the match scramble for arguably the closest playoff race that we've seen in the history of the Premier League, certainly since the new system was introduced with the elimination aspect of it back in 2013. So it's all boiling up nicely. Sort of a couple of points separating 6 players.
Yeah, you mentioned Glenn Durrant there. It's an incredible story that we've seen from him in this Premier League. He's 4 points clear at the top with 4 games to go, looking to become only the 3rd player to finish top of the Premier League, joining Phil Taylor and Michael Van Gerwen. I mean, if he is able to go on and achieve that and finish top, how big of an achievement would that be?
Well, I think it's already a massive achievement what he's done, and I think he'll take some catching. I think what summed it up for me, I mean, Gary Anderson very rarely gets angry, really angry after a darts game. He is that laid back and philosophical, and when he says, I just move on to the next one, he means it. So it's very rare that he gets livid with the way that he's played, but I can tell you, he was steaming after giving away that 7-3 lead against Glenn Durrant in the first section of Premier League games. But fair play, despite I think Anderson missed 7 match darts, didn't he? But for me, that summed up Durrant's grit and determination. Against the odds to come back and win 4 games. And we know there was a little war of words between him and Michael Van Gerwen I think it's all for show. They actually do get on very well. But Van Gerwen yet to beat Durham. He has the character. He has the game. He has the darts. He has these new flights, these new sort of kite-shaped flights. I think he posted something on social media that he used to have pear-shaped, and now he has sort of kite-shaped flights. And the difference in success rate with checkouts and big scores and 180s is remarkable. He's just at the top of his game, playing the best darts of his life. I think more important for him, he's loving every minute of it.
Got to talk about the world number one as well, Michael Van Gerwen. He had an indifferent week, we've got to say. 3 wins, 3 defeats from his 6 games, and sitting down in 3rd place at the moment. Doesn't look like he's going to continue that remarkable record of finishing top every year he's played in the Premier League. I mean, what's your take on the world number one right now?
I still think he's going to be the man to beat come finals night. Whenever that's played in October, as we say, hopefully in front of fans, whether it's the O2 or anywhere else, I still make him the favourite. He's had a blip, a bit low confidence, and so what? When I interviewed him the other night after he just scraped through and managed to win a game, it was like, he still believed, but he is the best. He still believes he's going to win it. And why shouldn't he? I think everyone was smiling at the fact that he lost 3 out of 4. If he'd lost 3 on the spin, it would have been his worst run ever in the Premier League. But that's the stature of Michael Van Gerwen, that when he's losing games, everybody's talking about it being a crisis. But to say, for me, he will reach finals night, and he will still be the man to beat.
Well, we're looking like Glenn Durrant's going to take one of those 4 spots. You fancy Michael Van Gerwen to take another one as well, but there's a lot of players vying for those 4 spots. I mean, who do you see potentially staying in that top 4 and possibly breaking into it this week?
Well, I think Gary Anderson will reach the playoffs. He always seems to have a run. I think he'd be much handier if he'd managed to get the 2 points instead of just 1 against Glenn Durrant. Whether that comes back to haunt him remains to be seen. And then after that, it's per many one, isn't it? It's that close with Wright and Aspinall and Smith and Price, and it really is a difficult one to call. I think Michael Smith at the moment is struggling for a bit of confidence. Gerwyn Price is gaining his. Peter Wright's lost 2 games in the first section of the Premier League, and he'll wonder how on earth he did. After getting that 9 darter, then nearly another one, losing both games. And Nathan Aspinall is very much holding his own and some in his debut season in the Premier League. So I think it'll be Durrant, obviously, Van Gerwen, Anderson, and then who knows, toss of a coin.
And lastly, we've got to touch on the next televised darts we've got after this week, which will be the World Series finals in Austria. And as things stand, it's going to be the first darts event on TV to have a little bit of a crowd back. I mean, of course, you'll be working on that for ITV. I mean, are you going to be heading to Austria for that one?
No, we won't. The presentation and the commentary for that, because of COVID concerns, will be done live, but it will be done from London. And I think for us that's a sensible way of going, a sensible way of doing things. We'll see how it evolves come the month after, maybe when it comes to the European Championship. But I think the most important thing is that everybody feels safe in what they're doing. Austria at the moment does have a rise in infections, but sport will have an exemption, which is why the tournament can still go ahead in Salzburg. And from what I'm hearing, they're looking at doing crowds in little sections, to make sure everybody is as safe as possible. But yeah, I mean, it'd be great to hear the genuine crowd noise. I think the fake crowd noise, or the taped crowd noise, I should say, has really worked. The players have all enjoyed it in the venue, and I know people at home have. It still gives that feeling of reality watching a darts game. And I think the Sky Sport production has been outstanding. I'm not saying that because I work for them. I really think it's been a magnificent effort from Sky and the players and the staging crew and matchroom to get on what we're getting on at the moment. And of course, the home tour is returning as well. We've had the Modus tour, and
everyone's doing their bit, to quench the thirst of darts fans around the world. But yeah, the World Series looks good. Looking forward to it. And looking. I've just got a funny feeling we may see a new winner of a major come the World Series next month. But let's see.
Yeah, we shall see. Well, Stuart, it's always nice to have a catch up with you, and wish you all the best with your work with the Premier League and the World Series finals coming up as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again to Stuart for joining us, and let's get into some picks then. The Premier League is going to get back up and running again this Wednesday. We've got a 5-night stretch going from Wednesday to Saturday to finish off the league phase of the season. And getting to our picks, I mean, going into this night on the Wednesday, it's been back and forth this last week between myself and you, Burton. You've had the lead, then I've had the lead, but a good couple of nights for me over the weekend. 3-0 clean sheet for me on Saturday, and then on this Sunday night, a 7-4 win for me. So now 45-40 in front, but still a long way to go. Still a lot of games to be played to claw that gap back, I'm sure. Let's get into these games on the Wednesday night, and we're going to kick things off with the Premier League leader, Glen Durrant, going up against Michael Smith. How do you see this first game going?
Well, on what I've seen this past week, there's only one thing you can say, and that's you got to expect Glen Durrant to get over the line in this one. Not that Michael Smith has been poor, but Glen Durrant has just been that dominant, and his timing has been as good as ever. He is the table topper for a reason. He's learning to bully people when he gets ahead. Well, he's always been a bully when he gets ahead, but even more so. That match against Daryl Gurney when he got 7-0 in front, okay, he let Gurney back into it, sort of, to make it 8-3 as opposed to 8-0. But he's just been incredible. Michael Smith has not been at that level. I don't think it'll be one-way traffic. Bully Boy will have his moments and will have his chances, but Durrant will take every opportunity he's given, and he'll create more than Michael Smith will. So I'm going to go 8-4 to the Premier League leader, and I'm going to put my joker on this one.
Just then I thought you were reading my paper again there, because I've got it going 8-5 and to Glen Durrant, and yeah, like you, I can only see this one going one way. And I look at the schedule of games as well for this Wednesday, and I think for Glen Durrant, I think he'll be delighted to be up first. I think he said it in a few interviews this week that during his career, whatever level he's played at, he's always liked to go up first. Even in his BDO days, I think when he was the top seed or defending champion, he'd start off a leg side on that opening afternoon. So for him during his career, he's loved to go up first, set the standard, get the job done out of the way, and then let all the other players worry about their own games. And you look at the state of the Premier League table at the moment, he's going to come back with a 4-point lead. He could well be 6 points clear with the others still to play, and I certainly think that's going to be the case. And Michael Smith, he has been a little bit unlucky. He's still well in the race to get in this top 4. He's only 2 points behind, but you look at the points that he's dropped. There was the game with Nathan Aspinall where he missed a lot of darts to get a point in that game, and he's lost 4 out of the 6 games, but he's put in some decent performances, not quite got the rub of the green. You go back to the first game this week when he lost to Gary Anderson with 107 average, so he's put in some big averages, just not quite fell for him so far this week. So I've got to go with the form line on the results like you. I'm going to go 8-5 to the Premier League leader.
On the next match, we see the man who's currently bottom of the table, Daryl Gurney, after his great escape last week, going against Gary Anderson, who's up to second. How do you see this one?
Yeah, it's a little bit like the first game, really. We've got the top 2 going up against the bottom 2 the first 2 games. And again, I'm going to go with the form line on this one, and got to give a massive shout out to myself, really, because last show we said who's going to get eliminated from the Premier League, and I was backing Daryl Gurney, the Handicappers Nightmare, to pull clear, and the appreciation minute Rob Cross to unfortunately finish in that bottom spot, and that is exactly what happened. But we did see as well that took a monster effort from Daryl. You know, he won his first 2 games, then he's lost a couple of games, and we've just seen tonight when we're recording this losing to Glen Durrant quite comfortably. But the previous night, an unbelievable performance, one of the best 95 averages you're likely to see to beat Peter Wright, who hit that 9 darters. So he is capable of pulling off some big results against these big boys, but Gary Anderson's just been on a different level so far in this Premier League restart. He's only lost 1 game, the 7-1 to go in price, but aside from that, and aside from those missed darts to beat Glen Durrant, he's been top draw, and I've got it going to Gary Anderson. I'm going to use my joker on this one as well. I'm going to go 8-4 to the Flying Scotsman.
Well, I'm going to go the opposite direction. These two have been evenly matched throughout their history, other than in the Premier League, where Daryl still has not beaten Gary. But they've played a lot of competitive matches deep in big televised events, and they're basically even in those matches. And Daryl Gurney, yes, okay, Gary Anderson, other than Glenn Durrant's probably been the best since the restart, but Daryl Gurney's been serviceable as well. Did a great job to escape, and then hasn't played poorly since then, just hasn't won matches. He beat Peter Wright when Peter Wright was averaging well over the ton and threw a 9-darter. He got steamrolled by Glenn Durrant, but Glenn Durrant threw a blinder in at him. Gurney really only had the one poor match since the first night back, and that was the match against Michael Smith that really ended his chances. All the pressure will be on Gary Anderson. None of it will be on Daryl Gurney, and Gurney's just going to want to go out and prove that he belongs in this second phase. He did it once against Peter Wright. He'll do it again against another Scotsman. I'm going the Handicappers Nightmare to live up to his nickname. I'm having him win it 8-5.
Well, then, third game of the night, and here's a repeat of the 2020 PDC World Championship final. It is Peter Wright against Michael van Gerwen. How do you see this game going?
This is such a tough one to pick. Peter Wright has been really unfortunate the last couple nights after climbing up to second on the table, really from nowhere, because he was well back in the table in the bottom half for most of the Premier League, climbed up for second after Judgement Night, but has had some unlucky performances. I mentioned that match against Daryl Gurney. I'll also mention his match on night 12 against Gerwyn Price, where he averaged 107, but Gerwyn Price, who averages almost 107, nipped him 8-6. Peter Wright hasn't done much wrong, but hasn't gotten the results. Michael van Gerwen hasn't done much right, but has won half the matches. This is a huge match for both of them. For Peter Wright to keep his playoff hopes alive, for Michael van Gerwen to start to get some separation between himself and those who are on the other side of the top four. And I don't think either of them will do it. I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to say they split the spoils, and they'll both have a huge amount of pressure on night 14, 7 legs apiece.
Yeah, I was considering the draw as well. And, I mean, these two have played countless times over the years. I think it's one of the most played games in PDC history, and they've had – it's probably hard to say if this is going to be the biggest game these two have played when you consider all the big finals that they've played. But in terms of Premier League phase, I don't think there'll be too many games these two have played where the stakes have been as high. And yeah, like you say, Peter Wright, in terms of results, it's not been a good few days for him. These last 3 days, he's lost 3 on the bounce. He got up to second place. He won back-to-back games, and then he's lost the next 3, and he's dropped down to 6th in the table, and only 1 point from dropping down to 7th. But still only 1 point outside that top 4. And I think his luck is going to turn around, because if he can carry on playing at the level he is, he's going to take some stopping. And I think, okay, we've spoken about Michael van Gerwen on the show already, that he's struggled so far. Well, he's got a couple of days to reset and get ready for this next block of games that's going to determine who's going to get in that top 4. So we could well see him flick the switch, get something going over these next few days going into these games. But I've just got a feeling I'm going to see a big performance from Peter Wright again. He's put in some monster averages, 9 darts for fun. He's 1 out of 3 so far on that double 12. Fancy him possibly getting another one, who knows? But I'm going to go with the world champion to get that win. He needs the win, and I think he's going to get it. I'm going to go 8-5 to Peter Wright.
And then last match of the night, Gerwyn Price currently holding on to the last spot in the top 4, going against the man right on his heels behind him only on goal differential, Nathan Aspinall. How do you see this one?
This is probably, I think these last couple of games are the hardest 2 to call for the night, and I do see this one going to 14 legs. And we went into this Premier League restart, Gerwyn Price was down in 7th place, and the first couple of days he was in that relegation battle, and even the Sky Sports viewers, they had him at, I think it got up to like 50% in the end between the 3 of him, Daryl Gurney and Rob Cross to get eliminated, even though he only needed to win 1 leg against Jermaine Wattermina to survive. But he's really picked up these last couple of days. He's had some setbacks during the week, and like I mentioned at the top of the show, I think it is him and Michael van Gerwen that are struggling the most to deal with having that lack of crowd and that energy to build off, really. And he's managed to pick up some decent results these last couple of days. I mean, the last couple of days he's beaten the world number one Michael van Gerwen, only the third time that he's beaten him in 25 career meetings, and then he's gone and beaten Peter Wright, who's averaged 107 against him again. He's in a last leg, and I think this game is going to go a last leg as well. I think Nathan Aspinall's in with a shout of this top four as well. He's only out of it by goal differential. He'll get in there if he gets a win. But I just think it's going to be Going Price or Edges this one. It's going to be tight. I think it's going to be the tightest game of the night. But I'm going to go with Going Price. I'm going to go 8-6 to Going Price.
Yeah, it really is tight on paper. And yeah, I think I was going to say 8-6 as well, but I wasn't sold on it. Now I'm questioning, should I go the other way or should I change the scoreline? Because I'm not going to pick the same thing you did. Going Price, well, he's been a bit of an enigma since the restart. He's had some absolutely brilliant performances, like the 7-0 against Jermaine Wondamena, beating Michael van Gerwen, destroying Gary Anderson. But he's also had a subpar match against Nathan Aspinall the first night back. Also didn't really play anywhere near his best against Glenn Durrant. But I think he's going to turn the tables on Nathan Aspinall. So I'm going to agree with you on who wins, but I'll go 8-5. I think he'll get that little bit extra to make sure that if he slips up later, that goal differential is so much better that there's no catch that Nathan Aspinall has to pass him. I think he'll get it done. So I'm going to go 8-5 to the Iceman.
Now we'll move on to our final guest on this week's show, and it is with the co-owner of the Big Five Sports Management and the manager of Nick Kenny, Wayne Warren, and John O'Shea, Paul Brown. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by one of the co-owners of the Big Five Sports Management, Paul Brown. Thanks very much for the time, Paul. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, Alex. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And as I say, thanks for the time. And let's get into your work with Big Five. How did that all come about?
Going back to about April 2016, I've been trying for about a year to get some help and support and sponsorship for Conan Whitehead, and just wasn't happening. And then suddenly we're out at an exhibition, and Conan had come along as a guest, and one of my now business partners, Nigel Smith, was there, and we had a couple of beers and a chat, and Nigel said he wanted to sponsor Conan, and Steve got involved. And I said, well, why don't I manage him? And that was how it all happened, over a beer. None of us had any experience, made a load of mistakes on the way, but it was just, it's been fun from the start. It was great to see Conan, 3 Lakesides and 3 Finder Masters, get his tour card back. I mean, he's with another management company now, but that was all very amicable. It was good to see him doing well.
Definitely, yeah. And for our listeners who maybe aren't aware of the players that you guys look after, I suppose the big names really, one of them is Nick Kenny, who's of course on the tour now as well with the PDC. How exciting was that when he got his tour card on that final day and he was going to be going onto the PDC circuit? That
was an incredible day. I mean, literally a week to the day after Wayne won the World Championship at the O2. And to be fair, the first 3 days of Q School were a massive learning curve for Nick. I think he'd be the first to agree. And on the Sunday, we literally got up, had a coffee and a chat, and just said, look, keep smiling all day and just go for it. You got nothing to lose. And funnily enough, his first round game, I think he had an 80 average, which was the lowest of the day he had, but won 5-0. So he was off and running, and he had a brilliant game against Jim Williams in the last 32, I think, where they both had over 100 averages. And then in the final game to get through, I think he had 110 average, which is outstanding. So, yeah, a massive relief. It was well deserved. I mean, he put so much in over the 2 years on the BDO tour, and he just grown and grown. So it's definitely the right step for him at the right time. So looking forward to Touchwood hopefully getting off to Germany in a couple of weeks' time for a week.
Definitely, yeah. We've known Nick for a little while now, going back to his BDO days, and was nice to see him get on that PDC tour. Now it's been a strange year for everyone really, but in terms of the darts, how did he find the first couple of months playing on the circuit before it all got shut down?
The first day, I mean, you turn up, you do the players brief. I mean, everything's fantastic how the setup is. I mean, it's literally perfect. So straight away he felt comfortable. He'd done the development tour and he picked up a couple of titles there, so he knew what to expect. And I just said to him, look, all you got to try and do is that first weekend is win a game. For day one he made the last 16, and he had another last 16, I think, in event 3.
So he knows what it's all about, and he's had some ups and downs, and he's had some first round exits and what have you. But it's a learning curve. He's only 27, and he's just going to grow and grow and grow. And I think Germany, where you got 6 days of back-to-back competition, it's a great chance to get back into it. And the home tour was good. I think I enjoyed that. I know there's discussion for a second event. So again, it's very very good that PDC are keeping all the players busy. I think what they're doing with the behind closed doors majors as well is fantastic.
Yeah, and you touched on the Autumn Series. That's what's going to be coming up next for Nick and a lot of the PDC tour card holders. We spoke to Glenn Durrant on our last show, and we talked about the trouble that it's been for players in the UK to get over to Germany, flights being cancelled and all that. And obviously yourself as a manager for Nick, what's that been like, that process, getting him to make sure he's going to be over there for the...
It was quite interesting. I mean, I booked flights to Hanover, which BA cancelled 3 days later. And then I took a bit of a punt on booking a flights to Frankfurt with a view to, when it was all confirmed, booking trains from Frankfurt to Hildesheim. But I hadn't actually booked them, so I was delighted when the PDC announced that the actual event was now in Frankfurt, or very close to Frankfurt. So that's worked out quite well. We've still got to get to the 10th and the BA actually take off, but we've got some contingencies with Lufthansa and what have you. So as long as the virus is under control and we're still able to travel, then we're all ready for everything. So.
And moving on to another player in your stable, a good friend of Nick Kenny as well, is of course Wayne Warren, the current BDO world champion. Just want to touch on really that tournament to begin with, because I was there myself. It was great to see him go all the way, pick up the title. What was that like that night, and seeing him go all the way and achieve a dream, really, becoming the BDO world champion?
The whole week was fantastic. I mean, we loved the venue. It really did work. Yes, there were some sessions where the crowd wasn't great, but we had Lakeside as well, so kind of what you're used to. But I mean, from Wayne's point of view, he was just the most consistent player throughout the tournament. He had some tough games. Wayne would be the first to admit he doesn't like slow players, and he had 2 or 3 of those, and certainly the first round game against Justin Thompson was a real struggle. But he got over the line there, and just grew and grew and grew. I mean, his 180 hitting was incredible. Combination finishes were great, and it didn't matter if he went down. He's just, 2 sets to 0 or 2 sets to 1 or whatever. He was just focused the whole time. I mean, that night will always live in my memory. I mean, we partied pretty hard. I think we finished at 6 in the morning. So.
Brilliant. And I know there was a big talking point during the week, and obviously it's come out since then, was the prize fund being slashed, and Wayne took a massive hit in that. He was supposed to be getting £100,000, ended up reported £23,000. I mean, how hard was that to pick him up, really, and cope with such a big loss in earnings, really, from that big win that he had?
It's a massive bitter pill. Everyone knows Wayne's the oldest world champion, and he should be, if it had been any of the last 13 years or so, picking up £100,000 is life-changing. And then he's had the double blow of Corona cancelling all the exhibitions that have been arranged for him. So he's probably looking at a sort of £150,000, £160,000 loss and counting. It's a bitter pill to swallow. We all knew it was going to be a lower payout. But at the end of the day, the players only were ever presented with one contract, and that contract that he signed stated he'd get £100,000 if he won. The women's prize fund was hardly changed. I think the winner got 2,000 or 2,500 less, and everyone else got paid out the same. Surely if there is a prize fund there, then everything should be pro rata. It was just handled extremely badly. And in the aftermath, I mean, it's as if he did nothing wrong, and everyone knew it was going to be £23,000. I mean, it goes on about he called everybody, or most players. Well, he didn't call us. The vice chairman called us and was very wishy-washy with what he said. So yes, we were prepared for it being bad, but we'd heard figures bandied about during the week of 50,000 to the winner, which is still a massive cut. This also a massive increase on 23,000. So it is what it is, and now we just need Corona to be polite and move on, and hopefully next year Wayne can get back playing darts. I mean, the Grand Slam invite is a massive thing for Wayne. He had the experience last year, sadly, on the back of an injury where he had no match practice. And now, hopefully, fully fit, he'll be ready to go. He'll grow from the experience last year. Whether it's going to be behind closed doors or not, we don't know yet. But that's great news. And then all roads will lead to Q School in January. I mean, the plan was to do it this year, but just after such a tough 9 days at the O2, and then to be hit on the Tuesday with the news that this is what you've won, he was in no frame of mind to really take part. And literally, we had one conversation, and that was it. I fully supported his decision, and we left it at that. So that's where we are. And I know the WDF are itching to announce things that they want to do, but with the virus, the tour has come to a halt. There has been no darts for them. I mean, there's been some online darts and what have you that people could play in, but that's not Wayne's bag at all. Grand Slam next stop for Wayne.
Yeah, I was going to come on to the Grand Slam. Obviously, that was some news that's come out quite recently with regards to your players and Wayne getting one of the two BDO spots gone down from 8 to 2 for this year, and we're not quite sure what's going to happen next year. But I suppose for Wayne, can that be a silver lining, if you like, that he's going to get the chance to play on a big stage in a TV event? We don't yet know if there's going to be a crowd there, but still there's going to be a decent prize fund to play for there.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what the prize fund is months in advance before you get there. Every step of the way how much you will be paid, and you'll be paid within a few days of the event. You can't fault how the PDC deal with everything. So I mean, of course he's looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to being there with him. He'll enjoy it. We always have fun. Win or lose, you do it with a smile on your face. If you lose, you're sad for your 15 minutes, and you work out why you lost and whatever, and then you move on, because there's always another day.
Definitely, yeah. And I suppose when the announcement came out, it might have been a little bit bittersweet for you guys. Obviously, the good news that Wayne was in, but one of your other players that you managed, John O'Shea, the reigning World Masters champion, he didn't get one of the two invites. How disappointing was that for yourself and John and everyone there, really, because it was such a great weekend for him at the Circus Tavern, and not to get an invite. I mean, for me personally, I was very disappointed that the PDC couldn't get him in there as well.
Well, I mean, if you look at last year, because I believe the Masters was a bit later than it usually was, the field for the Grand Slam had already been announced. So there's very little you can do there. You can't take somebody out that's already been picked. So you just have to wait and hope that you can put in the following year. And he will still be the World Masters champion, because there is no event in 2020. And I did hear an interview with Barry Hearn during the PDC Fishing Championships, I think it was. And he did talk about potential wild cards for others in the amateur side of the game. So, fingers crossed and touch wood that John will be considered for that. I know it'd be a massive uplift for him. It's it's been hard for him. I mean, we're used to travelling and seeing each other sort of every other week or whatever, and being at darts and smiling and enjoying the evenings and what have you. So, I've not seen John since the end of February in Slovakia. I think he had a semi-final there and a last 8 or last 16. And everything was on the up, and he was buzzing and loving his darts. And now, it's not. He's played a bit of online darts. He got to the last 4 in that big online competition. But playing darts in your kitchen every day is not quite the same as being on tour and rubbing noses with your opponent and what have you. So he's itching to get back over for the Challenge Tour in October. Again, fantastic that PDC are looking to do that with 6 events back to back. And then we've just got to wait and see whether there are further wild cards, and if he's lucky enough to get one, it'd be brilliant for him if that does happen.
And just a couple other players that you've got involved in your stable as well. Lennon Craddock, a young player, Ros Bulmer as well, who we've had on the show a little while ago now. What are those two up to at the minute?
Well, I mean, Lennon's getting ready for. I mean, we're 4 weeks away from the final 6 events on the development tour. I mean, we've only had the 4 in Germany. And that was an absolute nightmare for poor Lennon. We had our flight cancelled when we were at Heathrow. They rerouted us via another airline via Frankfurt. the other airline lost our bags. When the bags turned up 24 hours later, one was damaged. So he played the first two events in jeans, trainers that he borrowed from people. We borrowed darts or somebody. I mean, you can have a worse start to the year, but he handled it really well. He got his stuff down for the last two events, and he made the last 32. So I was really proud of him. How he pulled himself through what was a difficult weekend. So hopefully back on home soil, and if LNER can get us there on time, and we'll be going up a day early, of course. And give it all he can. So he knows he's good enough to get through to the World Youth, and that's obviously the main target. But just enjoy the 6 events.
And how about Roz as well? Because we've got the ladies series coming up. Is she going to be involved in that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It was brilliant to see that come out, because with the WDF, ceasing all events, I mean, nothing they can do about it. To have this news come out that there's an opportunity to qualify for the Grand Slam and to qualify for the World Championships, and to actually win some money as well, it's a lovely opportunity for her. I mean, again, Roz just getting back into it. Slovakia, she played very well in Slovakia. I think she had the last 8 was her best performance there. But I mean, she beat Maria O'Brien one day, I think in round 1. It was a notable win. Darts is just coming back for her, and she's playing more often, etc., etc. And then again, all taken away and standstill. So it'd be nice to have something coming back. I did say to all the players back in March, they were like, "Oh, when do you think we'll be playing again?" And I said that you've got to keep an open mind about this. And I said the earliest I believe we'll play any darts will be the end of January in Bucharest. And they were like, "You're joking." I said, "I'm not joking." I said, "This is real big stuff." I said, "So don't expect to be going to Chelsea in June, and we're not even going in December now." So that's how bad the situation is. But it's just nice that suddenly everyone's got an opportunity to play some darts this year, and it won't be under the usual circumstances, but they've got the chance, and they've all got a chance to win some money or get some ranking points or whatever. We just need the world to be in a better place next year, and we go again in 2021.
Definitely, yeah. And just touching on a point you make there, of course, when we go back to March, there wouldn't have been a lot of people thinking that we'd be 5 or 6 months down the road and things wouldn't be back to normal or getting that way. I mean, how hard has it been to keep your players motivated to practice, or just to keep their spirits up, really, with all these events that have been cancelled over the last 5 or 6 months?
At the end of the day, I mean, practice, some players, I think practice too much. Some people, they don't practice or they don't need to practice. So Wayne will be the first to tell you he's not a practicer. He doesn't like to practice. But he's used to playing darts 3 or 4 times a week. And, there's no Super League, there's no this down the pub league. So that's all lost. But if you don't have any darts to go to, what are you actually practicing for? And I think you can over-practice, and you can leave your game in your bedroom or your kitchen and be a bit stale when you go back out. But now they've all got a date when they know, I've got something to aim at now. So you can just start building up into that, and do whatever your routines are, and come in fresh. I mean, everyone's going to be lacking match practice. I mean, obviously you've got the Premier League players. It's a big advantage for them, but that's their reward for being at the top.
Definitely, yeah. And lastly, really going ahead, really for you guys at Big 5, any plans to get any more players in? Any plans at all for you guys? What have you got to look forward to now going ahead?
Always looking around. I mean, at the moment, we're really happy. It's a great bunch of people to work with. We do have a lot of fun when we go away. I'm a firm believer, if you're not enjoying stuff, you won't do it very well. And again, win, lose or draw, we'll always go and have fun in the evenings, and we're in bed at a sensible time, and we're ready for the next day or whatever. But it's about enjoying your life as well. It's just a game of darts at the end of the day. But as you can see on the PDC, that game of darts can completely change your life. So it's as long as they're smiling, then everyone's happy, and we'll move forward. I think in the past, probably been guilty of running before I could walk. Certainly a couple of years ago, I think we had 7 players on the BDO tour. That's a big expense, and yes, you can win some events and you can get a reward, and the players win, and everyone's happy. But it's also can be quite soul destroying. You make the last 16 of an event and you win £50 or £100. Whereas if you get to that stage in a PDC event, you win £1,500. So it can be soul destroying for a player where they're going week in, week out and maybe not quite seeing the rewards. But then it can all suddenly click into gear, and you look at. I mean, Nick's last year on the BDO tour was just sensational. I mean, he missed out by one dart on 2019 Worlds, and that took a bit to pick himself up. But then the following year, I think he finished on 162 points 2019, and then 311 last year. And his consistency was just staggering. Finals, winning tournaments. I think he won 3. Then straight after Q School, won the Romanian Open. Corona couldn't have come along at a worse time. I think we had a strike rate of 50% for winning events we were entering the team. So it was a brilliant start to the year, and it's fading away sadly. But we'll be all systems go from September, so lots to look forward to.
Definitely is. Well, Paul, thank you very much for taking out the time to have a chat with us, and wish you all the best with all your players and what they've got coming up for the rest of 2020, then of course going into 2021 as well.
Yep, you're welcome, Alex. Great to talk to you.
Thanks again to Paul for joining us, and we're going to finish up with some listener questions again this week. We've got a few to get through before we finish up. The first one comes from Colin Hammond, who says, is there any possibility MVG will go back and play with his old darts, or is he not allowed due to his sponsorship?
Yes, I'm not sure what the terms of his contract say. Obviously, his previous deal did not require him to use the XQ Max darts that they produced, because he didn't. He continued to use his very old darts, at least usually, the ones that well predated his contract with XQ Max. I'm not sure if the Winmar deal requires him to use the darts or not, but if they don't, I definitely think that's something that he'll be considering. It's not that these darts haven't worked for him, because we've seen him hit significant heights, especially right after switching to them, because he was playing better than he had the last couple of years back in February or March. But he hasn't been able to, since those first few nights back in the Summer Series, where he won 2 titles in 3 days, he hasn't gotten anywhere near that over the last 3 days in the World Match Play or in the Premier League. I'm not sure what it is, but it's definitely something that if he can, it's probably entering his mind now, and it wouldn't surprise me if we see him switch.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I've seen a few people mention about the darts, whether he goes back to a different set, and like you, I'm not quite sure what the deal is with that. I think we've seen players quite recently, I think a couple of years ago, Raymond van Barneveld, I think he used a unicorn set when he was with Target, but I'm not quite sure how that all works. But for me, I don't think there's much in the darts. I think Michael van Gerwen can pretty much play with anything. I do think it is something that is in the mind for him really at the moment, and he's struggling with a lack of crowd. That's what I personally think anyway, and I'd also think it's partly down to the lack of crowd and the atmosphere in there, but also do think it is down to the other players that they've seen him lose a couple of games this week. And I mentioned we've just spoken about Gerwyn Price. He's a player that's got an awful record against Michael van Gerwen, but when you're seeing that player lose a few times in the space of a couple of days, that does give you a little bit of a boost, and he did put in a real job on him. I think it was 8-4 in the end, so we are seeing a little bit of vulnerability there. I don't think he'll. Again, I'm not quite sure what the deals are with the sponsorship with Winmar or anything like that, but I do think it's not really a dart issue for me. I do think it is just a case of confidence and adapting to these new surroundings that we've got in this new normal, if you like.
Now, a second question comes from Owen Finn. We've mentioned Peter Wright's 9-darter on night 11. Do you think we'll see another 9-darter over the last 4 days before the playoffs? And if so, who do you have to hit it?
Yeah, quite possibly. And I just realised this question was between Wednesday and Saturday. It would have been good if it had been between Sunday and Saturday. And we did see Peter Wright get that double 12 tonight, because then we'd have been able to say Peter Wright. And like you said earlier, it was nice to see him get that first televised 9-darter. It was hard to believe that it was the first for him, but there's been a few occasions where he's missed that double 12. I can remember 3 or 4 occasions. I think Phil Taylor in the Grand Slam, Christo Reyes in the European Championship. I remember the UK Open final I was at in Minehead. He missed the double 12 for a 9-darter, went on to lose that leg, and that was the leg that would give Michael van Gerwen the UK Open title. And of course he missed it earlier on in the week as well before getting it on that Saturday night. So Peter Wright possibly, because he is getting those 180s, 177s to leave him on that finish. I'm possibly going to go with an outlier here. I know we could go with a Van Gerwen or an Anderson because they've got the most out of the field here, but I'm going to go with someone who's hit one already in this Premier League, and if he gets it again over these next few days, that's going to be a £50,000 bonus. I'm going to go with Michael Smith.
Yeah, I don't think we will. That's usually my answer because the odds are against it, especially when we're just talking 4 nights of 4 matches each, best out of 14 legs. The odds are significantly against it. But if it does happen, I think it'll be Peter Wright again. The one thing that had been holding him back for 9 darters is the fact that he hadn't been able to get over the line in a TV match and hit one. Because he's far too talented to have hit as few as he's had, and to have not hit one on TV was just really surprising. But he came close, then he was able to do it, and he came close again. And now that he's had one, and he knows that he can take out that 1-4-1 or that 1-4-4 and get a 9-darter, you almost think the floodgates will open, at least as far as 9-darters go. And by the floodgates opening, that means I think he'll hit another one or another couple over the rest of his career on television. I think if anyone's going to do it, he's the most likely, but I don't think anyone will over the 4 nights because the odds say that no one will.
Well, given what we've seen over the last few days, he may well need a 9-darter just to get another point on the board. But let's get into our final question from our listener questions, and it does come from Jack Evans, who says, do you have further ideas as to the global tournament that Burton started to flesh out in recent pods?
I've been talking about this now for a while, ever since it became clear that eventually the BDO would lose its Grand Slam spots. But I've also said it doesn't have to be the Grand Slam, but I do think there should be something that is a ranking event, not just the World Championships, but some other event that really is a global event and brings players in from other PDC-affiliated tours and gives additional meaning to those. And I think the Grand Slam does make the most sense to that. If I have any further ideas than those that I've said, either when I was on Twitter or on this show, I don't have any more right now, but I'm definitely open to them. I would like to see that. I would like to see a ranking event where the top player on the CDC and the top player on the Oceanic tours and the top player on the PDC Asian tour, top players, since that's representing multiple countries, all come together along with the top 16 or so in the PDC and compete in a event like the World Match Play or the World Grand Prix, where you're playing down to a winner. If there's a group, and it's a small event. If there's a group stage like the Grand Slam, that's great, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. But I want there to be something which really gives additional incentive to those players who are playing PDC-affiliated events, that they can get into one of those smaller, prestigious events. That's the idea behind it, and I think the Grand Slam is the most sensible, unless you're going to just add a new event to the calendar.
Yeah, I think you're right there. And look at the current events that we've got on the calendar. And I remember when we spoke to Barry Hearn a little while ago, back in April, when we were talking about possible new events, he was saying right now that that's right at the bottom of the list at the moment in terms of getting new events on. But the World Series Finals, that could possibly be one. If in terms of the name itself, it writes itself, doesn't it? Having the world in the title and showcasing the best of darts. But I do think that the Grand Slam is probably the best way forward, because you are giving these players that are travelling a lot of hours, a lot of miles to get over to the UK, if the Grand Slam is going to be one that stays in the UK, to play in those free games. It'll be a great opportunity for them, some good exposure to play free games on stage, usually I think over 3 different days as well. So they're going to be in the UK for 3 or 4 days minimum. If they get past the group stage, then even further, happy days. But yeah, I was just having a look as well, and there are plenty of tours that the PDC are affiliated to or have got their teeth into at the moment. We've got the CDC, as you mentioned there, near where you are, of course. You've got the one in Russia, the Australia, the Asian Tour, the Nordic and Baltic Tour. Could possibly even branch it out to the Development Tour and the Challenge Tour. You say if you win those events, you get in there. I know we've got the World Youth winner and runner-up. They get into the Grand Slam at the moment, but maybe giving that extra carrot for the Development Tour and the Challenge Tour could possibly get some more people in there. And I know it's probably a difficult time to say, we want to up the people that are entering these Development Tours and Challenge Tours with the restrictions that we've got at the moment, just getting these events on, but maybe further down the line, of course, for those. But yeah, I think like you, the Grand Slam could be the way forward.
Now, anything else for this week?
Got to say, as always, big thank you to our guests for joining us, Paul and Stuart, and possibly a third one when we're recording. We're not quite sure if we're going to speak to a third one, but fingers crossed we do. And thanks everyone for listening. And if you missed it last week, we had 2 episodes of our Darts Legends series drop during the break myself and you took. We had Shane Burgess and Paul Lim on the show, so do go and check them out. And of course, get involved in our Premier League Prediction League if you've not got involved in it yet. Still could get involved. I'm sure you might be able to catch myself and Burton. It might be a little bit difficult now with only a few games to go, but if you want to get involved, follow us on Twitter at Weekly Dartscast and retweet with comment our tweet with the games with your predicted scores. Pick one of those games as your joker game and you will double any points that you get in that game. And of course, I've got to say a big thank you to our friends at Widmail who are providing us with a signed set of Michael Van Gogh darts for the winner. So good luck to everyone involved and all the people that are near the top of that table at the moment as well. Good luck coming into this final week of league games.
Yes, indeed, and feels weird saying that now that right after we discussed whether Michael Van Gogh might be going back to his old darts, but I do thank Winmar for the set as a prize, and glad that neither of us are going to be the technical winners of it this year, at least the way it seems. But please let us know if you guys have any ideas for any further coverage now that we are getting into the money end of the year and darts will be coming at us left, right, and center. For anyone you want on, any things you want us to discuss that we haven't, get the questions in, get the suggestions in. We're happy to address whatever, well, not necessarily whatever, but almost whatever you want us to address. But for Alex Moss, I am Burton DeWitt. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week to recap the second phase of the Premier League and start looking ahead to the autumn series and some of the other events. Until then, hang tight.